this one pride parade that I was marching in when I was in elementary school. And at the end of the pride parade, there were all these quote-unquote Christians on the side corners holding up signs saying, God hates you. You're kindling. You're going to hell. Saying things like this on their signs. And when people from the parade would go to try to talk to them, they would get sprayed with water and urine. And as an elementary school kid, I looked up at my mom and I said, Mom, why are they acting like that? And she said, well, Caleb, they're Christians, and Christians hate gay people. If you are not like them, they will not like you. And I grew up not wanting to be a Christian at all. I remember this one time we went to go visit one of my mother's friends, a young man who's dying of AIDS, who in his prime, I mean, he looked like Michael B. Jordan from Black Panther. I mean, the guy was built, the guy was stacked, and yet he contracted HIV, which turned into AIDS. And we saw him a few days before he died, and he was literally a shell of the man that he used to be, shivering underneath 9 blankets. And his family was there, and they were a Christian family, quote-unquote Christian. But when we walked in there, they had their Bibles out, but they were lined up against the wall like they were waiting for a firing squad to come and get them. They didn't talk to us. They didn't talk to him. They didn't want to have anything to do with him. And I asked my mom, why are they acting like that? And she said, well, Caleb, you're Christians. Remember what I said. Christians hate gay people. If you are not like them, they will not like you. And every time I saw something like this, it kept on pushing me further into the darkness. I think we really underestimate how much our treatment of others or mistreatment of others informs their view of God. How you treat somebody can really help them decide what they think about God. And so by the time I got to high school, my life was out of control. I was sneaking out at night, living it up, getting drunk, hanging out. And I got invited by this, person to go to this Bible study. It was led by a high schooler, 4 high schoolers, and I thought it's going to be perfect. I'm going to go, I'm going to be a pretend Christian. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to end up learning about the Bible and dismantle their faith, and then I'll move on to the next Bible study, and the next one. Take down all the Bible studies in Missouri. That was my plan. And so you got to understand, at the age of 16, I had never stepped foot in a Christian household before, much less a Catholic household or a conservative Christian household or anything. And so God bless these people. I love them, but it looked like they had raided a Bible bookstore. And I love Bible bookstores, but it looked like that they had picked up the Bible bookstore and plopped it right in their living room. And I walked in, and they had the potpourri smell. You know, when you walk in a Bible bookstore and there's that potpourri smell, and then they had the nasty Christian breath mints to the side, the Testaments. Have you ever had those? It tastes like a cross between peppermint and rat poison. And it's like you take one of those and you're just like, somebody read me my last rites because I'm gone. And then they had all the Christian paintings on the wall. And at the age of 16, I leaned over to my friend and I'm like, why do these people have framed pictures of sheep and lions on the wall with Bible verses? And they invited me to go downstairs. And they said, we're going to study the Bible. And I was just thinking, I hope they don't sacrifice a live chicken. And we started reading from 1 Corinthians, and I didn't know where that was at. And so I was in 1 Chronicles. And everybody reads these nice verses from Paul, and I read a verse about somebody getting impaled. And I was really embarrassed. And they said, oh, where are you? I said, 1 Chronicles. They're like, you're in the Old Testament. I said, so there's a new one. There's updated 2.0. I had no clue. I just thought the Bible was a bunch of irrelevant writings that were dusty and old and everything like that. But the more that I kept on going back there, I tell you what proved me wrong. Not only was it the example of Jesus in the Gospels, but it was the relationships that I had and that I was building. And that these Christians in this Bible study, they were not like the people on the street corners. They were not like the family plastered up against the wall in the hospital room. That's not what they were like. They were different. And as I got to know them and as we built relationship, I noticed that I was pushed further and further into the light every single time. With every single conversation, I was being pushed more to God. You see, here's the deal. This week, we want you to really get a hold of this idea of contrast. And today, we're talking about the contrast of living in the darkness and living in the light. And if you want to know where you are when it comes to living in the darkness or living in the light, here's the deal. Look at your relationships. Because your relationships and the quality of those relationships will tell you a whole lot about your faith and about what you believe in God. If I were to watch you and if I were to see how you treat other people, especially people that are not like you, especially those that you have differences with, I can tell real quick what you believe about God by how you treat other people. What do your relationships look like? When it comes to your relationships, do they reveal you living in the light? Are they pushing you towards the light? Are you somebody that is pushing other people towards the light in how you love them, in adding value, in being a servant, in helping them, in not making your friendship just a one-way street, but a two-way street, and you're actually not just receiving from them, but you're giving to them? Or are you somebody who's in the darkness? Think about your relationships real quick. Think about your relationships with the people that you really can't stand. You know who I'm talking about, right? Some of these people are at this conference with you. Some of the people you might be rooming with. And when you see that person walking down the hallway, that's the person that makes you go, oh, about face, walking the other way. Right? You can say, I don't have that. We all have that. And how you treat that person. And yes, you do have a relationship with that person. And how you treat them says an awful lot about where your relationship is with God. What about the relationship with the people that you're attached to the most? With your friends that you always want to spend time with? Are you draining them talking about yourself? Are you learning more about them? How's your relationship with your parents? Your guardians? You may not like them. They might be pushing you down a little bit, but how's your relationship with them? Are you respecting them, or are you pulling away from them? What's your relationship like with your church? Are you fully engaged in the student ministry that you're a part of? Are you fully engaged in your small group? When it comes to the school year, are you fully engaged, or do you just kind of pull back and it's like Christianity is just a summer thing? How about this? What's your relationship like with God? How often are you spending time with God? Are you reading from the Bible daily? You might say, Caleb, I don't like to read. Great. Download the Bible app, YouVersion. You can listen to it for free in any translation you want. Are you praying? Even if for 3 minutes a day, are you praying? Are you serving others? Are you involved in your local church? Or you just show up when things are going bad and things aren't going good? Your relationships say an awful lot about you. Listen to what God says here through John in 1 John 2, 7 through 11. This is what John says. Dear friends, I am not writing you a new command, but an old one that you have heard since the beginning. This is an old command. This old command is the message you have heard, yet I am writing to you a new command. Its truth is seen in him, Jesus, and in you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. He says, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or a sister is still in darkness. Anyone who loves their brother or sister lives in the light, and there is nothing in them to make them stumble. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in the darkness. They do not know where they are going because the darkness has blinded them. God says it very, very simple. You cannot live in the light and mistreat other people. You cannot live in the light and devalue other people. You cannot live in the light and just see God as something you do on the side. He's a category. Because if that describes you, you're not in the light. You're in the darkness. But if you're really in the light, you're the type of person where you say, I don't always agree with what my parents say, but I'm going to respect them because that's part of my worship of God. I don't always agree with what my student ministry leader or my student ministry pastors may say, but I'm going to respect them. I may not like this person, but I'm going to allow my differences with people to drive me to them instead of away from them. I may not always be on board with my friends, but I'm still going to add value, and I'm not going to make it just all about me. And here's the thing, is that I vacillate between being in the darkness and being in the light. And a lot of the times, it's my life experiences, it's my circumstances, it's the things that happen to me and how I handle them that will either drive me into the darkness or it can drive me into the light. But if I really want to see where I'm at, and if I'm living in the light in the way that God wants me to, I need to look at my relationship with my others. I need to evaluate them, and I need to evaluate my relationship with God. And so tonight, you're going to have an amazing speaker. I mean, I cannot wait for you to hear from Brad, because he's going to unload a message to you about what it looks like to live in the light and how we can be a permanent fixture in the light. And for some of you, it's going to be the very first time that you have ever considered God or what it means to follow Jesus. But today, what I want you to do is I want you to look at your relationships, because your relationships will reveal a lot about whether or not you're walking in the light or if you're stumbling around in the darkness. So I want you to ask yourself questions. How am I doing in my friendships? How do I feel about different people? What do I do when I see certain people walking towards me? When I think of my parents or my guardians, what are some of the first things that go through my mind? But you can't lead yourself by yourself. You can't really evaluate and become self-aware of who you are without other people in your life. I mean, this is all about loving God and loving others. This is all about relationships. And so I want you to find at least one person, and I want you to ask them, how do you think I'm doing as a friend? That could be your student pastor. That could be a student leader. That could be a small group leader. That could be a friend. I don't know who it is. Maybe you need to call somebody. But you say, how am I doing as a friend? Am I helping people? Am I adding value? Am I somebody that people want to go to when they have an issue? Or am I somebody that causes the issue and the dramas? And if you're going to ask these questions, you better be prepared to hear the truth. And you need to give people permission to speak the truth. Because I'm going to tell you, it is so easy to stay in the darkness. But darkness can be scary after a while. It's like I had no idea that my daughter was just hanging out in the hallway in the middle of the night. And I knew my house pretty well. But it's easy to stumble in the darkness. And soon, you don't really know the difference because your eyes get acclimated to the darkness. And so some of you really need to take a tough look. Because if you aren't willing to look within yourself and evaluate where you are by your relationships, you will not be ready for what God is going to do inside of you and through you this week. And that's what we want. We love you guys. We've been praying for you guys. We prayed for you last night. And I believe that God is going to do some incredible things this week. But it all begins with you evaluating your relationships. How am I doing at loving God and loving others? Am I in the light? Am I in the darkness? Am I adding value? Am I hurting other people? Am I somebody who resolves problems? Do I create problems? Am I someone who handles my emotions well, or do I spew them on other people? Live in the light and be prepared for what God is going to do. And do not be afraid to ask those questions today.